this is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. Or actually, Monday is his actual birthday, and the Monday off is actually coinciding and falling on the same day that actually is his birthday. Because a lot of times as we move through the week, the 15th falls on a different part of the week, but we always are off on that Monday. However, on this year, the 15th and the Monday falls on the same day. So I want to talk a little bit about that in terms of Monday really is not a day off. And I know we take off, we have holidays, and I know they turned it in and they made it into a holiday, but they also said, you know what? We get a lot of days that we're off and we pretty much do nothing and go out and shop, and there are all kinds of sales and everything going on. So what they kind of did was with Martin Luther King's birthday, they kind of flipped it based on what the man's life was all about. Because Martin Luther King's life was about making life better for other people. Now, Martin was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but his calling and mission in life really was about making life better for others. And his 39 years on the face of the earth really was about that. As a matter of fact, he wound up losing his life because he was trying to make life better for everybody else. Everybody think Martin was just about black people, but the truth of the matter is Martin was about everybody. He was about every race, gender, decision-making, lifestyle, whatever. He was about everybody as a human being treated as a human being and treated not necessarily evenly or fairly to a degree, but whatever was afforded to one, everyone had the same opportunity. In other words, you wouldn't shut somebody out based on their skin color or based on their gender, that they would not be shut out or now stomped upon or enslaved, whatever, because of something that really didn't matter. Because at the end of the day, all of us bleed the same color blood. Now, I don't care how rich you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care your gender. I don't care your sexual orientation. I don't care about any of that. If you cut any of us, the blood is going to bleed red. I don't care any of those orientations, and I say it at the end of each show, whether you're, male, female, black, white, short, tall, heavy, thin, doesn't matter. There's an equalizer called death. That one day, somebody, regardless of who you are going to pass away. Just like the equalizer with the fact that you were born. So what Martin was about was the fact that we're all human beings. We should have the same opportunities to everything. Everyone has it now. Whether you get it or not is on you. The effort that you put in, the effort that you expend, but you should not be shut out. So, for example, there was a time, and for that matter, it's still a time, where that if you were a person of color, African American, or black, or Negro, or whatever it was called at that time, the opportunities were not there for you based on the color of your skin. So what Martin was trying to say was that should not matter, that if I have the qualifications, I've done what I needed to do like anybody else, I should be able to get like anybody else should get. So with his birthday, they came up with the idea that rather than having a day off laying around doing nothing or going out shopping or the marketers or the retailers or the business folks taking advantage like they do all the rest of the holidays of all these so-called sales where they're knocking off 10%, 25%, 50%, 75% or whatever to get you into the store, rather than it be about shopping and laying around doing nothing, they said, let's make it a day of service, a day on. So they called it, rather than a day off, they said, let's make it a day on, meaning that you will go out now and find some type of community service project or go help your neighbor or go do something for somebody that maybe can't do themselves, or go visit somebody in the hospital, or go visit somebody in the nursing home, or go, rake your neighbor's leaves or shovel your neighbor's snow. You'll do something on that day. Now, it doesn't have to be the whole day. No one's saying on the day on that you have to spend your entire day doing that. And if you do, that's great. But a part of your day to remember Dr. King is that you do something for somebody else, not just yourself. So Monday is billed as a day on and not a day off. So I'm encouraging everyone who is listening to the sound of my voice, whether you're listening on the podcast, whether you're listening on the radio, whether you're listening on the internet, wherever you are in the world, if you can hear me and you understand what I'm talking about, please try to make it your business on Monday to do something for somebody else. I mean, I'll make it as small as just picking up the telephone and phoning somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time. Say, you know what, I was just thinking about you. Or to the point wherein, maybe someone who is sick or shut in, you sit down and write them a card and you go drop it in the mailbox and they'll get it sometime next week. Something we need to be able to do on Monday in the spirit of service to somebody else besides ourselves, because that's what Dr. King was all about. The man only lived to be 39 years old, and he was gunned down senselessly because he was trying to help. I mean, folks were jealous of him. They were. Martin Luther King had a doctorate degree. That's why he had an earned doctorate. He wasn't one of these honorary doctorates. He had an earned doctorate degree. And for an African American during that time, because there's not that many earned doctorate African Americans as is, there's a lot more now than it was. But during the time when he was coming through, Martin was born in 1929. During the time whenever Martin was coming through, there weren't that many African American doctorate degrees out there. So he had an earned doctorate. He was also pastor. So that's why we call him the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So you have Reverend, you have Doctor, both earned, not given. So the folks were jealous of him, could speak like none other. And I am a public speaking aficionado. I am a public speaking fan. I love reading and I love writing and I love speaking. And I love to see good writing and read good writing, and I love to hear good speaking. And Martin Luther King was the best in my book. Just the tone of his voice, his word structure, how he said things, what he said was one of the best. So folks were jealous of him because there were folks, regardless of what color, who did not have those skills. There were folks, regardless of what color, did not have those degrees, the education and the connections and the clout. So they were jealous of that. And they plotted. I had last year on the show, we heard the interview by the author who wrote the book about the plot to kill King. So they plotted, they colluded, all of that to get rid of this African-American man who had it going on, for lack of a better way of putting it. Martin Luther King had it going on, and they all knew it. Same way they knew Barack Obama had it going on, they all knew it, which will lead me later on to my topic a little bit later on. Just like they knew Barack had it going on. Jealous of that. That's driving some of this nonsense that we're seeing now, is the jealousy over Barack Obama. And that's my personal opinion, because the views and opinions heard on this show are solely those of the host and guests and may not reflect the views of the station owner. But that's my humble opinion. That jealousy of Obama is what's driving some of this quirkiness that we're getting now. Not all of it, because it was already quirky to begin with, but I think the jealousy heightened it. But that's what was going on with Dr. King. You had folks out there that were jealous as they come. So you had the jealousy, you had just a pure unadulterated hatred going on. The fact that that was a black man, you had that hatred going on. So it was so many things going on that fed into the fact that that man was gunned down at 39 years old. So Monday is a day on, not a day off. Regardless of how small the deed for somebody else that you may do it. Now for me on Monday, there's a wonderful organization that's going to be coming into the school that I lead. It's called Jersey Cares. And Jersey Cares, as a part of their day of service or day on, they have volunteers from companies that are coming in. They're going to come into my school, and we're actually putting together a game room for the students. So all the students who do what they're supposed to do, and they earn a ticket into the game room, they'll get a little free time on their lunch or their recess where they can actually go in and play video games or ping pong or whatever we put in there. But in any event, Jersey Cares is coming on Monday, and they're going to set up, they're going to paint the room, put down the rugs and the furniture, and they're going to have, when the kids come back on Tuesday, they're going to have a game room that we'll be able to use as an incentive for good behavior. Now, that's a whole nother topic, the fact that we have to incent someone to do what they're supposed to do, but that's a whole nother topic. But the kids are going to have a game room, and we're going to use that as an incentive for them doing what they're supposed to do in school. They'll have an opportunity to visit the game room and take some downtime to play video games and all that kind of stuff. All right. So make Monday a day on. That's what I'm going to be doing. I can remember doing various community service projects on this date. I remember one time I worked with Habitat of Humanity on this particular day and painted a new apartment or a new housing complex that was going on. I can remember doing other things. So I encourage you, in the memory of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to go out and do something for somebody else. Okay, now that's that. In terms of, you've been hearing me a lot talking about be grateful and be thankful. Last week when I was on the air, I told you there was a story about the whole thing about, it was kind of like in progression about the levels of thankfulness. I couldn't find it at the time whenever I was on the air, but lo and behold, when I went home, I found it, and it was on, oddly enough, YouTube. YouTube has everything. So in any event, there's a little video on there. It's called Be Grateful for What You Have. I did a podcast on it. So for those of you, whenever I make this into the podcast, if you're hearing it again, forgive me. But for those in the listening audience, for gobrave.org and 88.7 FM, the story goes something like this. There's a gentleman. He is driving like one of the top sports cars in the world. I don't know if it's a Maserati, a Ferrari, a Tesla, whatever it's called, whatever. But he's driving one of the top sports cars in the world. And he's sitting there driving, and a helicopter goes over, and he says, wow, I wish I had a helicopter. So that's now mind you, where he is he's driving, a Maserati, one of the top sports cars in the world. Maybach, Maserati, but I don't even know what they are at the moment, whatever the top sport cars is. He's driving that, and he's saying to himself, I wish I had a helicopter. Now, then they're at a stoplight, and what pulls up next to him is someone who's driving like a BMW or a top-of-the-line luxury car. And he pulls up next to the top-line sports car and said, that's my dream car. Okay, so just as I tell the story, follow the progression. We had the top sports car dreaming about the helicopter. We had someone who's driving a top-line luxury car dreaming about the top-line race car, sports car. That's my dream car. Then someone pulls up next to the top line luxury car in like a Ford or maybe a Kia like I drive, or a Hyundai or a Honda, or, whatever an average car is, pulls up next to the luxury car and says, I wish I could afford that car. Then someone pulls up next to the person in the Ford or the Kia or the Honda or the Hyundai or whatever car that may be, pull up with an older car, a hoopty, if you will, and says, I wish I could afford a new car. Then someone now pulls up next to the regular old car, the hoopty, on a bicycle. And the person on the bicycle says, I wish I could afford a car, period. Then what you see is the scene goes to the person on the bicycle. You see the person standing at the bus stop, who has to walk wherever they go or catch the bus or what have you. And that person says, gee, I wish I had a bike. And then it goes to someone sitting in a wheelchair up on a balcony who's looking down at the person who's standing at the bus stop, saying in his mind, wow, he can go wherever he'd like to go. He can move around however he wants to move around and go wherever he wants to go. So the moral of that story is be grateful for what you have. Because someone always has less than and is wishing for what you have. Take the progression. Sports car wants the helicopter. Luxury car wants the sports car. Regular car wants the luxury car. Older car wants the regular car. Right. Regular car wants the luxury car. The older car wants the regular car. The person on the bike wants the hoopty. The person standing at the bus stop wants the bike, and the person sitting on the balcony in the wheelchair just wants to be able to walk. And that's what we do. That's what we do. We're ungrateful for what we do have. We need to be thankful for what we do have. And let me see, I'm going to tie this together, because since last Sunday, I went to a funeral last Sunday afternoon. The lady, 63 years old, 62, 63 years old, passed away on Christmas Day. Had no clue she was going to be gone. None. Left work on that Friday, went home. Matter of fact, had won a raffle had won a bicycle on that Friday on her job. Went home looking to enjoy the Christmas holidays and come back to work like everybody else. Passed away on Christmas Day. So we had her funeral last Sunday afternoon. So within the week now, a friend of my very long time, lifelong friend, person who knew me before there was a me, knew my mother and father, knew my mother in particular, knew me before there was a me. Had just seen him on Sunday morning. His house caught fire Sunday night into early Monday morning. And he was burned way worse than I thought. Burned all in his face and his chest and his back and his arm. Matter of fact, his head and face is all wrapped up. So I went to see him in the burn center. Had no idea what I was walking into. I personally thought he just had minor burns. I had no idea he had burns that really could have taken him out of here. He's lucky to be alive. And we talked and chatted and everything. So that was that. So my week started off with a funeral. Then I went visiting someone in the burn center. And then, yes, let me see. Today is Saturday. On Thursday, went to the funeral home twice. One for a classmate. It was a gentleman who graduated a couple years before me. We were in Eastside. We were at the high school at the same time. As a matter of fact, he was drum major of the band a couple years prior to, my years. Went there, so he would have been around 58-ish, 57, 58, somewhere around there, because he was born in 1959. Passed away, again, not expecting to be gone, and I know my mother's listening, but this is what she's always talking about with shoveling snow. On those very cold and snowy days, he was out there, from what I understand, shoveling snow. That was on the 5th, because he passed away on January 5th. Went out there, shoveled snow, took him out. So, classmate, a couple years ahead of me, drum major of the band whenever we were in school, so forth and so on. Visited the funeral home for him. And again, that was unexpected. He wasn't sick, went out, shovel snow like everybody else, didn't make it. Okay. Then there was an 18-year-old child from the high school. Another unexpected case. And I'm sharing all this to say we got to be grateful for the fact that we're even alive. In this particular kid's case, he left home, went to Wendy's, was in the drive-thru, and it was, again, on one of those cold days, because I keep telling people, extreme cold can mess some stuff up. It can mess some equipment and human bodies up. Extreme cold, extreme heat, both of those two extremes, they'll mess some stuff up. This young man went to Wendy's, was sitting in the drive-thru window. It was very cold out there. An asthma attack came on. He started having trouble breathing with the asthma. He was able to make it out of the car into the Wendy's restaurant. And from what I understand, I wasn't there. I'm going by what I was told. From what I understand, collapsed in the restaurant. By the time ambulance and everything got there to get him to the hospital, it was too late. He was already gone. Mind you, his birthday was January 11th. He was being viewed on January 11th. As he turned 18, he was lying in state being viewed. And I thought about that was deep. I said, wow, he's being viewed on his 18th birthday. We were standing, the funeral home was packed, of course, because he was young. Funeral home was packed. I got there later because the real crowd had already gone by the time I got there. He was in state from 5 to 9. I got there at 8:30. So even though it was a large crowd still there, most of the kids in the crowd and everything had gone through. But that was deep, to sit there and watch and look at an 18-year-old kid who had just turned 18 the very day that he was laying there being viewed in the funeral home. Again, totally unexpected. And when I came home, what I told my wife was, I said, wow, the fact that we make it alive from day to day is a miracle. Because there are way more things to take us out than it is to keep us in. But for those of us who believe, who are believers, like I told you last week when I was talking with my guests, for those of you who are not believers, when we start talking believer talk, it may not register to you. It may not make sense to you. But for those of us who are believers, who believe in God, we know that one factor is what's keeping us in. With all the things that can take us out, because there are so many things that could take us out, but there's that one factor that's keeping us in, and that's God. Because God is more powerful than all the other things. Than all the other things that could take us out, God is more powerful than all of them. But it is something to think about in terms of how many ways there are to be taken out. Heart attacks, asthma attacks, violence, just the natural, breathing problems and all kinds of different diseases and so forth and so on. All of those things can take us out, but there's that one factor that's keeping us in. So I told my wife, I said, wow, just the fact that you folks make it to the ages that they make it to. I was talking to my mother the other day. She's telling me somebody's 107. You got people that lived to 103 and 102 and 99 and 98. The fact that somebody lives that long with everything there is that could take us out is an absolute miracle. That's the only thing I could call it. The fact that we wake up every morning could be considered a miracle, and that we need to be grateful for. The fact that this morning, because I went to bed really early last night. I dropped off to sleep last night around 7:30, so now I was up at 2. Fell asleep at 7:30. Now I'm up at 2. Can't go back to sleep, so I've been up for the most part ever since 2:30 this morning. because I had my sleep. I was at 7 o'clock. But the fact that we were able to go to sleep and then get up and go where it is that we'd like to go and move about during the day, make it back home safely, go back to sleep again. When you really think about that, that is a miracle. Because there are so many other variables and factors that could take you out. Walking across the street, could get hit by a car. If you happen to be in an area where folks are shooting, could get hit by a stray bullet. If you happen to be, there's just no limit to the list of things that could take you out. Like I said, the cold weather messed some stuff up. Mess some people up, mess some systems up. I was listening about, there was a power outage yesterday. And the power outage came because whenever the streets were covered with ice, they put the salt down. When the ice and the salt melted together and it seeped down into the manhole covers, it tore up some electrical lines. When it went underground, whenever the ice melted with the salt in it, it wore away the electrical wires. But see, that was a part of the cold weather. Cold weather messes up some stuff. Now, heat messes up some stuff too, but cold weather really messes up some stuff. So the fact that we're still here, we're still alive, take it from me, that's a miracle. Go back to that little story. The sports car man talking about a helicopter. The luxury car man talking about the sports car. The regular car person talking about the luxury car. The hoopty talking about the regular car. The bicycle talking about the hoopty. Person walking or having to get on the bus talking about the bicycle, and the person in the wheelchair just saying, I wish I could get around like I wanted to, period. We need to be grateful. Bottom line. And I've been harping on this lately, this whole thing of gratitude, because it can be taken away so quickly. The friend I told you about earlier week, I saw him Sunday morning. When I went Sunday morning, fine. Just like every other Sunday morning since I've been going there. Sunday morning, fine. The next time I saw him, and we talked about that too, just how quickly things can happen. Next time I saw him, he was gauze all around. The only thing open in his head was his eyes, his nose, and his mouth. Everything else was wrapped because of the burns. And he was telling me how part of his arm had gotten burned so bad, how it was hurting him. It was really hurting him. And how his fingertips and everything just kept tingling, feeling like they were burning. That fire is no joke. Nobody deserves that. I don't care what they've done or not done. Nobody deserves that. That fire is no joke. But that's just how quickly things changed. And see, earlier when I was talking about, the Martin Luther King, about the jealousy and all that, the reason that's what took him out, it was hatred, jealousy, all this in the same family. But that's the same thing that's going on now with our current president in contrast or relation to our last president. Because one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is the difference between being a racist and being prejudiced. Because people, I think, really get them confused. Two different words, really two different meanings, but a lot of times they're used as if they were the same. There's a difference between being prejudiced and being racist. One could say every human is prejudiced to one way or the other, because prejudice really is kind of about personal choice of what you like and what you don't like. If you break down the word prejudice, it goes into prejudge. Matter of fact, we really don't even use prejudice right to a degree, because if you go into the history of prejudice, prejudice is prejudge. That means you've judged something before you know about it. You don't even know anything about it yet. You've already made a judgment. That's what prejudice is really kind of all about. So we always use the example, people have preferences. Some like chocolate, some like vanilla, some don't like chocolate, some don't like vanilla, whatever. Okay. So when you start getting into prejudices, though, really, if you take that example or that definition a step further, really what you get into is, I've never tasted vanilla. I don't know anything about vanilla. I'm just telling you, I don't like vanilla. Now, when somebody says why, I can't even give you a reason. That's where prejudice comes from. You've prejudged it. Now, a lot of times we say, well, people have their preferences, because I guess maybe we need to throw the word preference in there. Maybe we need to throw the word racist, prejudice, and preference. Maybe the three of them need to be defined, because preference is whenever you know what something is and you just prefer, you don't like it. I prefer not to deal with that. I don't like chocolate ice cream. I've tasted it. I don't like it. I don't like vanilla ice cream. I've tasted it. I don't like it. I don't like rum raisin. I've tasted it. I don't like it. That's preference. But prejudice is when you prejudge something. You don't know anything about it, and yet you've already made up your mind, I don't like it. Now, that's prejudice and preference. But when you get into racist, this is the difference, and this is what people don't get. In order to be racist, you have to have some power or control over. So that's why when people say black people can't be racist, that's not true. On an individual basis, yes, regardless, I don't care who it is, anybody can be racist if they meet the certain requirements of being able to control the destiny of someone else. So let's use the example. It's a supervisor or a boss. Supervisor, black. Employee, white. The supervisor now can determine whether or not that employee keeps his or her job or not based on how they evaluate them, based on what's said, if they have the authority to hire and fire, whatever. They have that power. So let's say, for example, that is a black person and a white person is working with them, and they can turn around and now fire the person for no other reason than the fact that they don't like them because they're white. Yeah, so in that particular instance, yes, a black person can be racist, because you always hear people don't know black people can't be racist. Yes, they can. All right. But racism gets into the part wherever you're talking about someone who has authority or power that can impact somebody else. And in our history, historically, that's where the whole slavery thing comes in. You had white folks who were in power who now were able to impact the lives of black people. That's what Martin Luther King was fighting for. It wasn't just blacks, for everybody. All right. Or you could take male, female for that matter. The males were in charge and could impact the lives of females. Regardless of what, either way, it's somebody who's in power that can impact somebody else. So whenever they're saying the president could be racist, they're absolutely right, because he has the power to impact the lives of others. So when he starts making commentary like what was made yesterday, I don't even know the entire quote because there's excerpts of it that's been lifted out. I guess the most egregious parts, the most insulting parts, because now he's insulted Africa and Haiti. We already insulted Puerto Rico. It already insulted Mexico. Already insulted over there with South Korea, North Korea, China, everybody. Already insulted all these folks. So now he's added Haiti and Africa to the list. And when it comes down to, could he possibly be? Yes, because he's in a position now when he's saying, well, no, you can't come in this country. Well, no, you have to leave this country. And he's doing that based on race, based on background, ethnicity, color. When you're doing it based on it, that falls in the category of racist. That falls under the definition of racist. So when everybody's running around talking, oh, no, he's not racist. Yes, he is, based on what he's saying and what he's doing. And I get the whole thing of, talking about terrorists and all that, but everybody's not a terrorist. Everybody that comes from another country is not a terrorist. Matter of fact, when you start doing the research, you'll start seeing that most of the folks that come from other countries outdo us as Americans in terms of education, in terms of getting their education, in terms of going and doing what they need to do to better themselves. Most of the folks that come from these other countries do better than those of us who grew up here. And I've seen that even in the education system. I've seen kids who transfer into the country from another country, get into our school system, and they blow away our students who've been here. That I've seen with, as much as I hate to say with my own two eyes, what else am I supposed to see it with? But that I've seen with my own two eyes. I've seen children transfer over here from Africa, come here, once they've gotten acclimated and settled, blew students who grew up here away academically. Folks coming from other countries. Why do you think most or so many of them are doctors? Why do you think if you can't walk into a Dunkin' Donuts or service stations and these folks from other countries and other areas are not the ones owning them, not just running them, owning them? Very clear on that. Not just the employee, they are the owners. They're from other countries. Everybody that come over here is not a terrorist. So the fact that the president can sit in a meeting and call another country, and I won't even say the word, all I can tell you is it begins with an S, and then you put the word whole behind it, HOLE. That's what he called the other countries, allegedly. He claims he didn't do it, which again, something's pathological with him. Because you have people sitting in a room that hear you say something, and then you turn around and say you didn't say it. Something's wrong with that. And yet, like I put on social media this morning, I'm less disappointed with him than I am with the people who try to defend him. The people who try to defend that crazy behavior, I worry about them more than I do him, because he is what he is. He has not changed. I knew what he was when he got in there. That's what we asked for. Well, when I say we, I'm not talking about me, because I didn't ask for that. I believed Mike Bloomberg when he said he was one of the biggest BSers going. I believed that when Mike Bloomberg said that, I believed it. Apparently not enough of the country did, because he was on point. And we're finding that out every day. But you still have those that are defending the BS. I worry about them more than I do him. I really do. And I put that on social media. When I was up this morning, see, now I pulled one of his numbers because I'm up in the AM hours, nothing else to do, wide awake. So I actually go to Twitter myself, and I go onto Twitter and I put the same thing. I'm more disappointed with the folks who try to defend this aberrant behavior than I am with him, because that tells me there's something wrong with a lot of people out there. That tells me there's a lot of hatred going on out there. It tells me there's a lot of jealousy going on out there. It tells me there's a lot of hate going on out there for the reasons of color, background, ethnicity. Because when you can make a comment like that about countries, and you're the president of the United States, now that's one thing, you in your backyard at a barbecue talking crap, or as he calls it, locker room talk. It's another thing when you're president of the United States. And see, there are folks, all them folks down there keep letting him get away with that. That's what I'm talking about, the folks that can defend it. You get that Sarah Huckabee, whatever her name is, standing up there, lying, talking all this nonsense. It used to be Sean Spicer, now it's her. But they be standing there trying to defend that nonsense. And then you got the so-called loyals. Now, what was real interesting was when Hillary was running and she said something about, the base, his base was deplorables. Oh, everybody had a fit. They had a fit over the word deplorables. Yet now he's going to be able to call other countries S-holes, and watch, it's going to go right on through like he said nothing. Watch how this thing plays out. They took her to task for just saying, well, you know what, I think folks who follow him are deplorable. Or, she called them the deplorables or whatever she called them. And I'm not saying that was right. But they took her to task and had an absolute fit because she said something about deplorables. And yet this man, and she wasn't president, mind you. She was not president of the United States. But yet this man is president of the United States. And he's able to call other countries' names like that and watch it float right on by. See, that's what I'm saying. That's the folks I'm more concerned with than him. I'm more concerned with all these folks that sit there and ha-ha and poo-poo and go along with it and standing up there trying to defend and all that nonsense than I am him. All right. That's my rant for the morning. That's my commentary. I'm going to turn it into the podcast as well. You can catch the podcast on all the podcast sites. That's the Marc Medley Show. And as well as you're listening to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. And it is germane to reading, because if all the things that I said, you can go and look it up. You can look it up in books. You can go to the dictionary and look up the definition of preference. Look up the definition of racist. Look up the definition of prejudice. So that's a part of reading. Go to the dictionary, look them up. 3 different words, yet they're used interchangeably. Read the newspapers. I generally don't read newspapers anymore, but read social media and newspapers, and it'll tell you about the story from yesterday. So that's reading. And then in the terms of the day on versus the day off, you can look that up as well. You can read the history of the birthday celebration after it was made a national holiday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.